for the city council as well. We have a recommendation for them, or we will make a recommendation that is based on technical issues, not necessarily any opinions that anyone might have on it, as well as we do for all of what we do, as we are mainly a technical type of commission. Now, I know many of you aren't here, is why I'm going through this more tonight, as I did in the last meeting, in how we conduct our meetings here. We will have a presentation by the department. Then we will ask the applicant to speak at that time, and then we will open the floor for those who wish to speak to the application. I will start on one side of the room and work around to the other. I will ask, as I always do, if you hear someone say what you intend to say, we do not need to hear it again. You can say, I agree with what the other person said, or I amplify what the other person said, but we don't have to hear it again. I assure you, we listen to what you say. And I'll also ask you to come to the microphone and give your name and your address so that we may know who we're talking to. So if that's how we will conduct this meeting, again, we are fairly clear in how our procedures are, and we're rather perfunctory in it. It's not a time for oration. This is a time for decision making for us so that we can move through the agenda that we have. So the first item we have on the agenda tonight is a request for rezoning from R1 to R3 conditional overlay for a multifamily residential conditional overlay for 16 proposed structures on this particular property. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, this new request is for a conditional overlay. The applicant has increased the buffer area that was proposed from last month from 30 to 40 feet. He's also tweaked the hammer T that was required by the fire department for apparatus turnaround to align it more along the line of the southern property line there. The applicant is requesting rezoning from R1 to R3-CO. For the 10.7 acres located on the Old Chisholm Road. The applicant plans to construct 16 structures comprised of 32 multifamily units and 112 parking spaces. The applicant proposes only to construct 17% of the number of units allowed in the R3 zone for the property available. All structures are proposed to be one-story. The technical committee reviewed this proposed site layout. The technical committee recommends a tree survey to identify healthy, mature species within the required landscape buffer area. Mature trees in a landscape buffer provide more immediate benefits like greater shade, better erosion control, increased carbon capture, established root systems, higher biodiversity support, and can instantly enhance property value. Such tree species shall become part of the landscape buffer and accepted as part of the landscaping plan. The applicant's representatives have been made aware of this request. Mr. Chairman, this proposal conforms to the City of Comprehensive Plan, both pre and post condition. Departmental comments. Mr. Chairman, rezoning is recommended subject to the following. The tree survey must be approved by the technical committee and building/zoning official. A conditional overlay plat with the approved site plan must be recorded. A check in the amount of $100 made payable to the Lauderdale County probate judge must accompany the plat for recording fees. A legal description written to the center lines of all adjoining rights-of-way in Word format is required for advertisement purposes. Once the tree survey, conditional overlay plat, and legal description have been submitted to this office and are reviewed and approved by the technical committee and the building/zoning official, this office will forward this request to the Florence City Council for advertisement and final action. Mr. Chairman, the applicant's representative is in attendance tonight, and all adjoining property owners were notified and signs were posted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Just for review, can you describe what a conditional overlay zoning is for the city of Florence?
Sure. A conditional overlay zoning district, like we said, requires a site plan to be recorded. The applicant will be bound by that site plan. The only way to change it is to come back before this body and notice be posted and such, just like happened today.
Okay, very good. So once it's built, it stays built as is.
That is correct, and it follows the property and not the applicant.
Just for some very small review as to density, we have 16 units, 32 doors on this particular application. What was the density for R1 family development on this?
For R1, for single-family development, they could have built 46 structures.
And for R3, how many units?
Under a traditional overlay, again, this is traditional rezoning request, it would have been 186 allowable doors. But again, the applicant, if approved, would be bound by the 32 units.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Smith, I appreciate that. Any questions for the department at this time?
I have one, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, tell me a little bit about the tree survey and who will conduct that, please?
Well, the applicant has been made aware of the requirement from the technical committee. It would be his choice as to who to hire to conduct that. Once that tree survey is performed, they will come back, give us a map and a report showing what trees that they want to be left. And then again, the technical committee and then the building/zoning official would have to approve that because it would be a part of the landscape buffer area.
Ms. Eubanks?
That's
Anyone else for the department at this time?
To add one point
Yes,
to
ma'am.
that, the trees that are identified must be approved trees that are within the City of Florence landscaping ordinance. And of course, they also must be, healthy and mature at the time in order for them to be considered as part of the buffer. That's not to say that they would not have to add additional landscaping. In fact, they likely will.
So it's in
But by-
addition to the buffer.
Correct. But by having those mature trees that are there, then you obviously reap the benefits that we outlined in the report.
Good questions. Any other questions for the department?
What is the buffer zone?
They have provided 40 foot.
And if it was a residential, it would be 10 feet?
On a residential, there is no buffer
I'm
requirement.
talking about for building off the property line?
They would have to meet the setbacks, which a rear,
Setback.
rear yard would be 10 foot.
So we went
yes.
from 0 to 40.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Good questions all. Any other questions for the department? Ms. Jones?
So on the, I don't know if there's a lot of people that do tree surveys, maybe? There is, okay. I was just wondering if they choose not to touch it at all, do they still have to do a tree survey? I'm just at, like, cost-wise.
It was a requirement of the technical committee, so unless the applicant came back with an argument that we're going to leave, what's there, we would still want to know what healthy species are there. Simply because if they're unhealthy species and those are to come down, or they, over time, will erode, then, that's gonna increase the amount of plant material that they would need to install.
Okay.
What we're looking for is a complete 40-foot landscape buffer, giving them the opportunity to leave mature trees, because the way that the ordinance is written, the landscape ordinance is written, it does not give credit for existing plant material.
Okay.
So by doing the tree survey and adding it as part of the site plan, they
get to
can,
include it.
right,
Got
they
it.
get to include it. So it's, it really is it's a positive on both sides. You get the mature plant material, but they also have the benefit of keeping those existing and it counting toward their required installation.
Got it. That's great.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Any other questions for the department? And with that, I'll open the floor to the applicant at this time, if the applicant has anything to add, or the applicant's representative has anything to add. Yeah, Mr. Davis, yes. If you will please come to the podium and give your name and address for the commission, please.
My name is Tyndall Davis. I live at 438 Northwood here in Florence. Good evening to you all, and I certainly appreciate the job you're doing. It's tough, and I understand you're paid quite a bit to do this. But I do appreciate it. It's not easy. The only thing I wanted to say is that I want to identify myself as a developer. I'm not the landowner. That transaction will based upon this being, this transaction. And one of the things I wanted to get across to you guys is I did take time to try to go find all the neighbors that own this piece of property. I've done it in the past, you know, I've been before the board many times in the past. And I found 10 of the 14 property owners and had an opportunity to sit down and talk to them. There was a couple of houses that were like me, they go to bed early, and they didn't come to the door, the lights were out, and I didn't think it'd be appropriate to ring the doorbell, and I had to work during the day to get back out there on a couple. And it was one home that has no trespassing, and I honored that. I didn't think it'd be right to go up the yard and act like I knew you, and I didn't. And then there's one piece of property whose home is for sale, and that particular person was leaving, you know, as soon as the home sells, so there wasn't any interest there. But primarily, I wanted to take time to go out and sit down with each of these individuals that were willing to listen. They all were, they're all nice folks, they're all just like us. You know, just all good people in the community. And try to help them understand maybe what alternatives there were, just like we spoke of here. Our alternative is it's not zoned, is to put 47 smaller houses that we don't have any control of who buys or what they do in the yards. Whereas if we go in and do our 32 residences, then we manage it like an HOA. We keep the yards mowed. We take care of all the exterior. Our projects, I can name some, are all in excellent shape. You know, I think they'll all be good neighbors. We target 55 and over residents, so we know who good tenants would be, and that's who we target. And we don't have any issues out there. But tonight, I want everybody to know who I am, and I want you to have the ability to ask me to come back up. I've got our civil engineer here with us that if you've got questions about drainage or any of those type of issues that I don't have the ability to talk to you about, one of us will try to come back up here and answer those questions for you if you come up. That's all I need. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Davis, before you leave, does the commission have any questions for Mr. Davis?
Thank you.
Well, thank you for Mr. Davis, and I appreciate you coming up. Of course, this commission does know you and the developments that you do, and that you do what you say you're going to do. I hope you understand that we can't really promote that. And we don't encourage to do that, but we do appreciate that you're here tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Now, I'm going to open the floor at this time for the public hearing as well, and I will start on my left. If any of our fine representatives and civic representatives and our great officers of the fire department, as well as the other departments that are represented here tonight, do any of y'all have anything to say to this application tonight? Is there anyone here in this middle section have anything to speak to this?
Yeah, well.
Thank you, sir. If you would give us your name and your address, please.
Yeah, my name's Mike White. I live at 4704 Chisholm Road, Florence. I hear you talking about trees, but I haven't heard anything about traffic. Here's my problem with an apartment complex. Old Chisholm Road is a dangerous road. It always has been. Not long ago, about a year ago, a young lady was killed at the entrance to Old Chisholm Road from Chisholm Road. I think they finally caught the driver, but it's not a easy road to navigate. It's very dark. It's very windy. Apartment complexes are well and good and overpriced right now, but they do depreciate. There was a very nice apartment complex right at the start of Rose Park years ago. It's kind of gone into terrible shape right now. Some very unsavory looking characters I see coming in and out of that apartment complex and swinging out of Rose Drive. The other thing is Forest Hills Elementary School. Forest Hills Elementary School has traffic practically from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock in 30 minutes intervals all day long. How is an apartment complex, which if you have 2 people living in an apartment, you may have 6 cars come in and out of there. You never know, you know. This isn't an HOA. This isn't a homeowners association. These are renters, they're renting apartments. And as Mr. Davis made a wonderful case, it may be a great place for right now, you know, for the next 5 years or so. What's gonna happen 10 or 15 years from now, when it starts to go downhill? Like the one across the street there by Rhodes Park. You're gonna have cars swinging in and out at all hours of the night, and all kind of things going on a little 2-lane road across from the cemetery. Just consider, you're talking about trees, why don't we talk about traffic? Last week, you let a grocery store go in on Wright Drive. This week, you're gonna put a apartment complex on Old Chisholm Road. We better start worrying about our traffic in Florence and quit, you know, I think we're getting a little bit too big for our britches until we start doing a few things about our traffic situation. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, were there any comments from the police, 911, or the street department on the current report that we have?
There were not.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else to speak to this application in the middle section here? Anyone to speak to this application in this section? Yes, sir, please.
Yes, my name is Ronnie Hendricks. I live at 3610 Old Chisholm Road. I am a property owner adjacent to the property in question. I was at the last meeting and spoke to you guys, and I've already expressed my gratitude to you guys for listening to us. Some of our concerns, obviously, my biggest concern, and many of our biggest concerns, were regarding the landscaping and losing the mature trees. I appreciate the fact that Mr. Davis has addressed those for us, and I can't speak for everyone here, but for me and my family, we are very appreciative of what he's done. We feel like this is a win-win situation. The property is going to be developed, and I would much prefer having a limited number of duplexes with a larger or wider space between, especially with leaving the existing trees and that tree survey. That for us is very much a win-win. My wife and I, my family and I, my mom lives with us as well. She's elderly and enjoys the nature, the birds, and all that kind of stuff. So we are very appreciative of that, and we think that this is much better than even leaving it as an R1 development, because I would much rather have this than having a 2-story home 10 feet from my backyard, looking directly into my backyard. So I just want to say thank you to this commission for listening to us. I want to say thank you to Mr. Davis for listening to us and responding very positively. So thank you very much.
Mr. Hendricks, thank you very much. Is there anyone else here to speak to this application in this section right here? My stage right. Yes, ma'am? Yes, please. Your name and address, please, ma'am.
My name is Martha McCain. I'm at 117 Deer Trail Lane. On that map, I'm next to the property on the very bottom. I guess one of my questions that wasn't addressed by
Mr. Davis.
Mr. Davis, thank you. Has the entrance to the place been moved from the last map?
Mr. Smith, it has not, has it? No, ma'am, it has not.
And then I'll just finally say I echo their opinions. I appreciate what this is going to do. I still have a swimming pool that's not being dealt with. But, and it doesn't seem fair that I have to put up a privacy fence at my own expense. But I guess finally I'll say, if the city group's on board with the emergency egress in and out of this 1-lane road, And the road condition itself, which is not good, it's on an old base that's too small. And children and people can't walk there. There's no shoulder, there's nothing. It goes from pavement to ditch. So I feel like that, in this proximity to the school, this should be addressed on Old Chisholm Road. Okay?
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
McCain. And I would encourage you to forward your comments to the engineering department and the street department about those particular concerns as well. Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak this? Yes, sir, I see someone in the back here.
Excuse my voice, so this sinus going on.
As we all, thank you, sir. We understand your condition.
Had to get a shot today. But anyway, I'm Corey Stoltz, live at 3612 Old Chisholm Road. As far as, I kind of feel like my back's against the wall because of the fact that there's a buffer for 40 feet for the, the apartments, but there's no buffer for the houses. If I had a buffer for the houses, I would much rather like that. But since there's not a choice at all, then I would much rather an apartment be 40 feet from my house than a house be 10 feet. You know what I mean? Like he was saying. I feel like my back's up against the wall on that. And the other question I had, since the engineer's here, I've got a real concern about the water issue. That's one of my main concerns. I'm really concerned that it's gonna come into my yard. And I talked to Mr. Davis the other day.
Yes.
He came and talked to me, and he said something about putting some riffraff in there and stuff. My only concern with that is, like I was telling him, that my water line, it comes down that road, and then it cuts. And it cuts right in the ditch, right up underneath the ditch that I have dug to a certain point. So all that water will flow, so all that water will flow and go where it needs to go, and it's under control now a little bit, but when it gets real bad, it goes up over. And if you was to dig that ditch down and do all that stuff, my concern is the water issue and mosquitoes too. So, if you can address that,
Yeah, Mr.
that
Campbell,
would
hold
help
on
me.
for a minute. I have shaking of heads from the department on one of those as we go, so maybe we can help you here.
Yeah,
Answer these
yeah.
questions. Yeah, Ms. Bailey?
Well, and it could have been a misunderstanding on my part, but the 40-foot landscape buffer is not 40 feet from the back of the building. There's still setbacks that have to be met. The 40 feet is a landscape buffer, then you have setbacks.
So what am
to
I
the
looking
building.
at?
Well, a lot more than 40 feet.
60?
I'm not sure what the setback is. I think it may be 10.
So,
I think it may be 10,
So 50.
yeah.
And the
If
reason
not
I'm,
more, in some cases it looks
the
like
reason
it's
I'm
more.
asking this is 'cause
But I just wanted to
Yeah.
make that
right.
clarification.
And I hope that helps you a little bit as well. And now let's move to the stormwater and the stormwater runoff as we have here. Mr. Smith, you can help me here, but I think we all have become accustomed to knowing that a development has to show a zero impact on the water.
Yeah, post-development cannot exceed pre-development.
That's a good way to put it, post-development versus pre-development.
on houses or apartments.
On houses or apartments, that's right, any sort of development. And also, there are retention pond basements that are designed, green spaces that are designed to also keep that, any water that might be displaced from asphalt on site
Mhm.
as well, to help those things. So that is also part of what the developer has to accomplish
Yeah.
for the building department.
Okay, that was my concern because the way that land is, where they want to put the retention pond, they're gonna have to dig into a huge hill. And it's gonna take a lot of those trees that are already sucking up a lot of that water, and so it's just, It's just pretty big concern for me.
Personally, I can't see that in the design on this. I'll take your word for it. You
Oh,
live
yeah,
there.
I mean, I can show it to you.
Okay, well, I'll take your word
Yeah,
for it.
it's
You
stuff
live
like
there.
that, so-
That's right, exactly right. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. I do as well. But the developer will be accountable for taking care of that,
Okay.
and those issues as well. Thank you,
Thanks
Mr.
very
McCall.
much.
Mr. Simpson. Is there anyone else here to speak to this application on this side? Yes, ma'am, please.
Hi, my name is Dorothy Osborne. I'm at 105 Deer Trail Lane. I just wondered, you can't really see through all the trees, and I know there is the hill, like Corey mentioned, but will the apartments be built on the hills, or will that all be leveled? I'm just curious.
That, Ms. Bailey, I really don't know the answer to that
They have to
question.
submit a grading plan as part of their permitting process. If this were to move forward, it would not be a purview of the commission or our department, but the building official would have to approve their grading plan.
Yeah, they would have to approve the grading plan before that could ever happen.
So we don't really know if it'll be, completely flat or built on
I
small
mean, I
hills.
don't imagine they would build on top of a hill, but,
Yeah.
I mean, there will be some grading. But it may be something that they could approach Mr. Davis about.
With their concerns.
Or, to ask if they've looked at any grading plans. I don't know that they have at this point since it's so early in the developmental.
Keep in mind, this is at
process.
the very
Okay.
early beginnings of it. It hasn't even been approved for this rezoning.
Just
as well.
curious, though.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, very much. Is there anyone else here to speak to this application from this side? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm Benzie Stanfield. I live at 121 Deer Trail Lane. I was here last month with you. And I just wanted to say I thank you to Mr. Tindall Davis for coming by last night and discussing the proposal further with my husband and I. He shed a lot of light on things that we did not know at the last meeting. And I want to thank you, the members of the Planning Commission, for your considerations. Obviously, you guys put some effort into this, and I appreciate that. And you've addressed many of our concerns. And in light of the revisions made by the conditional overlay, my husband and I no longer oppose the rezoning. Thank you.
Stanfield, thank you very much. Is there anyone else here to speak to this application at this time? Anyone at all? Yes, sir.
Ernie Wan, 3660 Old Chisholm Road. I'm glad that the developer was kind enough to show up for the second meeting. And there's an engineer here to answer our questions. I am the northernmost house right there, so we've got a lot going on in my backyard. I'm very happy about the kindness that the developer has shown as far as the consideration made to the barriers and a standing promise to limit the development to the duplexes instead of a apartment complex or a private subdivision R1. Can I ask the engineer where the sewage hookup would be for this, having lived in the neighborhood and knowing we're on a fragile system, as well as where our electricity will be run from the substation, which goes across what used to be an easement?
Well, I can tell you it's probably not been designed yet at this time. Again, we're not even this is to preliminary subdivision plan, whether the concept itself would be appropriate and a request for rezoning to the city council. So I believe that's not been calculated yet as to where the best place for that would be to be and how it would be designed.
Hey, Jim, based on the last two questions, maybe Could we explain what happens after the city council on a high level?
That would be wonderful. What's the next step?
Good idea, Ms. Bailey.
Thank you.
So should this garner a recommendation tonight, it will go through an advertising period as required by state law, and a public hearing will be held at the city council level. That date would be determined by the submittal of the legal description as well as advertising deadlines that the city council has. Should it receive a favorable vote from the city council, then the developer would, or the owner-developer, in conjunction with one another, would have to submit a plat to our office that will be recorded. That plat is part of the conditional overlay requirements. And so when Mr. Smith at the beginning of the meeting talked about locking in a site plan, that's what that plat is for. So they're not subdividing the property, we're recording a plat that represents the conditional overlay elements. Following that, there is no further action by the Planning Commission or the City Council. They then would apply for permits, which would include any type of grading. A grading plan would have to be submitted, including all of their utility infrastructure and any additional public infrastructure like stormwater drainage systems, as well as any other public improvements like roads, sidewalks, etc. Those are all reviewed by the city engineer, utility engineers, as well as the building official in anticipation of permits being issued. So again, those types of elements as far as placement of utilities, placement of sanitary waste connections would be, as part of their internal departmental reviews for permitting, not as part of the planning department's purview or the planning commission's purview.
Does that help you, Mr. Vaughn?
Understood. It is not up to you to answer those questions.
That's right.
It'll be passed up the ladder. Will we be privy to an announcement when that next step of permitting as residents, adjacent residents, will we get an announcement in the mail?
No, I do not.
How can we be aware of when that's happening, and if it is a public review?
It is not a public review for permits.
So the next step would be the city council.
Right, correct.
Okay. Will we be, as adjacent properties, get a
It's-
notification
it's
for
public
that when it goes up the
notification.
ladder?
It's public notification, yes.
Okay. Is there a set number of days that does the notification have to come in a timely manner? Because the sign for this second proposal for rezoning showed up 7 days ago.
Right.
And we did not get anything in the mail
Yeah, but
until.
from the last meeting, you knew that the next planning commission meeting would be on the fourth Tuesday in October.
From the
That's right.
last meeting of the planning commission, it was voted to not recommend it to go up the ladder.
That's right. But our meetings are always posted as well on the fourth and fourth Tuesday of each month. And then, of course, then with the city council, they will announce when their meetings are and what will be on the agenda, but there will already be postings on the property before that. as
Before
well.
the city council.
That's right, before the city council meets.
Okay, well then, I don't want to waste any more of your time. I appreciate you for listening to us and hearing us the last time.
All right,
Thank you
thank you
so
very
much.
much, sir. Is there anyone else here to speak to this application? No. Okay, thank you very much, and with that, we will close this public hearing. Thank you for your participation on this project. Right now, we do have two items. First, a request. Actually, as the only thing we have on this particular item is just a request for a recommendation for rezoning. Again, we are just a recommending body for a request for rezoning from R1 single family residential to R3 conditional overlay multifamily residential of the 10.7 acres located on Old Chisholm Road. Again, this has been passed by the technical committee meeting, as well as having 2 hearings before this body as well. Any questions from the department, or any discussion by the department? Yes, Ms. Adams.
And Mr. Smith said this, that conditional overlay runs with the property, not with the developer, the owner. I just want to reiterate that hypothetically, if this property got sold, that conditional overlay would still be in place.
Yes, ma'am, you are correct, as it runs with the land as a recorded plat. Any other questions? We have a request. Do I have a motion for a recommendation of rezoning from R1 to R3? Thank you, Ms. Jones. I have a motion for a recommendation. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second by Ms. Hubbard. Is there any discussion on this motion? All in favor by show of hands? Thank you very much. Just passed unanimously. Thank you very much, Commission. Thank you for all those attending for this. Thank you, sir. Those who are here just for this hearing and not for the next one, if y'all would like to quietly make your way out so we can quickly get back to this, to the next one as well, I would appreciate it. We'll give you a couple of minutes. But we ask you, please be as quiet as, because we will get right back to it here. The department. Goes without saying. Yes. It does. Thank all of you very much. Our next item on the agenda is a request for a recommendation of rezoning from R1 Single Family Residential to R2 Single Family Small Lot rezoning, and then a request for preliminary plan approval for 73 proposed structures on 23.59 acres located north of Ryan's Place subdivision, south of Brash Road. The applicant is RC Development Company, LLC. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for informational purposes, this property is located south of Brash Road, just to the west of Augusta Street and north of Ryan Place subdivision. The applicant is requesting rezoning from R1 to R2 and preliminary plan approval for the 23.59 acres located at the area that I just told you about. The applicant plans to subdivide the property into 73 lots, as you see on the screen, in order to construct 73 single-family residential structures in an R2 zone. Up to 143 structures could be constructed. That's the land area that they have. Access is proposed from Rash Road to the north and an established stub out from Ryan's Place subdivision to the south. The Foster Drive is the name of the stub out. The applicant has provided a preliminary plan illustrating pedestrian accommodations along all newly proposed rights-of-ways. All proposed lots meet the requirements of the R2 zoning classification. This proposal conforms to the City of Florence comprehensive plan, both pre and post condition. Departmental comment: rezoning and preliminary plan approval is recommended subject to the following. The signature certificate for Lauderdale County Flood Management Director must be changed to the City of Florence Flood Management Director, as this property is within the city limits of Florence. Road names are required for the proposed rights-of-ways for all future submittals. A legal description written to the center lines of all adjoining rights-of-ways must be submitted to this office for advertisement purposes. Once the legal description has been delivered, this office will forward the request to the Florence City Council for advertisement and final action. Final plat approval may not be applied for until the rezoning process has been completed. All other departmental comments must be satisfied. Mr. Chairman, the applicant's representative is in attendance. They were giving a copy of all departmental comments before this meeting. All adjoining property owners were notified and signs were posted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Just a couple of questions. as noted in the report as well, I see a comment that from the water department and wastewater, that does concur with the request, but there is an issue of required ingress and egress to maintain the sanitary sewer and address for water improvements and ensuring water quality, supply, and pressure for adequate domestic use and fire protection. But it's my understanding, of course, that these would be developer-required improvements.
That is correct.
Should there be a problem with
Yeah,
it?
for the
Seems more of a
audience.
question.
Yeah, for the audience's information, I can read those if you would like for me to. Concurrence for rezoning, and this is water, wastewater. Concurrence for rezoning and preliminary plan approval is given. The general plan requires adequate ingress, egress, access to maintain sanitary sewer and address known water main improvements required to backfeed the subdivision's internal mains, ensuring water quality, supply pressure for domestic use, and fire protection. Changes to the lot, street layout, and easements may be required to accomplish this. Water and sewer main improvements, extensions, or relocations are the responsibility of the owner or developer, subject to surety, permits, and water wastewater department construction requirements. Developer's engineer is responsible for all permit applications for installing public water mains in city or county rights-of-ways.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith, because I know there has been some concern about that for other developments around this particular area as well.
And I will say, our water wastewater department has been in contact with this potential developer about these issues regarding water quality and sewer protection.
Okay, very good.
And what they're required to do.
And what they're required to do. Exactly right. Okay, very good. Is there any other questions for the department? Ms. Jones?
Does the requirement for this development, it affects, like it will help improve the other developments nearby, or?
So what we're, in terms of the wastewater infrastructure, it's our understanding, and I don't believe we have anyone here from water wastewater tonight, but it's our understanding that in previous developmental proposals that we have seen for this property, that the infrastructure required by the developer is extensive in that it corrects issues that have come up in adjacent areas. So now, I want to be very clear that that is our understanding from water wastewater. With this being a preliminary plan, remember that it's a concept only, and by them submitting this concept, it allows them to get these comments from the individual departments so that they can either A, decide to move forward into the general plan, or make adjustments, to, maybe mitigate some of the requirements, that may prove to be, abnormally costly. That's what this phase of review is for, is to, look at those technical details and for them to determine if they want to, move forward with the plan as it is. So, but that is our understanding, and I want to make that, clear for you all as well as those that are in attendance, that, barring no one being here from water wastewater, that it is our understanding that the requirements, and they're extensive as you can see, were designed so that they do not exacerbate problems downstream, that actually improve those, particularly wastewater.
Thank you, Ms. Prater. Any other questions for the department? Is the applicant here to speak to this application, or the applicant's representative? Yes, sir.
My name is Colby Gilchrist. I'm at 250 Old Orchard Road, Florence.
Yes, sir.
I am the developer as well as going to be the builder in the subdivision. I know there's been some concerns about the housing, what's going in there. They will be just like the houses that are in Ryan's place next to it. They're only on smaller lots because we needed a few more lots to help pay for the infrastructure costs that we're having to put in with this water line and everything else. They'll be 1,700 to 2,000 square feet homes, $300,000 to $400,000. So they'll be large, you know, there's be a smaller lot, but we're still able to get larger homes. As far as the infrastructure, Don is here. Anybody has questions for that? But I just wanted to clear that up. Thank you.
I think that's been very, hold on, Mr. Gilchrist, very much. So as we, sorry, can't get, let's get away that quick, sorry. Good try, good try. But as we saw from, or heard from the department, you could build a whole lot more houses on
Yes,
this particular.
that is correct.
But you're opting to go for a higher end house.
That is correct. We want to stick with, there'll be 80% brick, 20%, you know, 80-20 brick, just like Ryan's place. They'll match. They'll be very similar to those. They're just on smaller lots. And again, the only reason was to help with the cost of the putting this water line in to loop it all. That was one of the things that were holding the subdivision up for so long. And we're going to go ahead and do all of that, but we need more lots to help pay for it.
Of course, you know, the housing construction or exterior is not part of our purview.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate you sharing that with us very much.
For sure.
You did. Any other questions for the developer before I set him forward? Thank you very much, Mr. Gilchrist, and I do appreciate you explaining your purpose for this. I know it's not required, but I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I am going to open the floor to a public hearing at this time again. Mr. Edwards, do you have anything to say? Oh, okay, I do appreciate you being here, Councilman Edwards, for your district here. It means a lot, it does. In this middle section here, is there anyone here to speak to this application? Okay, yes, ma'am. I thought I was going to be left in a lurch there with that section. Thank you.
My name is Sharon Draper. I live at 230 Chestnut Oak Drive. I have just finished building my house there after a 3-year wait with COVID. And I did get a thing in my mailbox. I don't know where it came from. Telling about the meeting tonight, I had no idea. I take that shortcut through that awful road on Rush Road on Foster, sometimes when it's not wet. And so I knew they were gonna build something there. I thought it was gonna be like the next step up, maybe because it was such a big area, and building even nicer homes. The one on our street is, I think, 2,200 is the minimum build. And so I could afford only to do the 2,200, just barely, but I guess being a widow, I just have concerns about my property value going down and having what will be something I will maybe have to cash in on later for long-term care or something, you know, that it might make it go down. And I'm not familiar with all the neighborhoods specifically, but I think Ryan's Ridge is like around the corner. I'm not sure. Around the corner, I'm just not sure about all the names of them. But they are nice houses, you know, down Chestnut Oak, and that was just my concern. I thought they were gonna have like a bigger area. If they are like 1,800 to 2,200 square feet, my concern would be just that they have an HOA that would make the people adhere to not having RVs, you know, parked in their front yard and that kind of stuff. That's one reason I sold our house in Killen and moved into this subdivision, because I wanted to not have cars on, you know, blocks or anything, and not have RVs parked right next to my driveway and that kind of thing, and not have 14 statues of whatever in the front yard. You know, I know that sounds bad, but I wanted some uniformity and some neatness. And with the HOA that is on our street, I know that is one thing they have. Just to know, I guess, if it's gonna be a tight HOA that will prohibit people from doing things that you know, the landscaping and the ornaments in the yard and that kind of thing, you know. And parking, you know, like 4 cars on the half grass and half on the road kind of thing, you know, because in some of those areas, you do have to really watch out if you're backing out because you will run into a car across the street, you know. But that's just basically it. The tendency maybe to devalue the other houses right next to Rash Road on around, that's just was basically my concern.
Thank you, Ms. Draper. I can tell you as you spoke, I see the developer back there nodding his head to an HOA, and that is typically what these developments do, but that is not in the purview of the planning commission. I hope you understand that as well. Again, the volunteering of the square footage as well as the building components for something that we don't necessarily take into consideration as to appropriateness, but it was nice to hear that. And we appreciate you speaking to us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here in this middle section to speak? If not, I'll move to this section right here. Yeah, in the front here. Yes, sir.
My name is Jeff Clemens. I live at 621 West Rash Road. I would like to address the map just for a second.
Yes, sir. But don't touch it.
This is my house right here. I won't touch it. This is where I live.
Okay.
The first question I have is completely around all of this property, right through here and along this other side, is, as you talked about in the last issue, mature trees. And I have a concern about all of those trees being removed from this property for development. I'm not sure what they had planned for that, but like, for instance, behind my fence, I have about 10 or 15 feet full of mature trees. And I have mature trees all the way down the side as a border, and they're directly, some are on the property line, some are on the other property by a foot. So I have that concern. Some of you might recognize me. I was here about a year ago dealing with this same piece of property. Then it was about 40 houses that were going to be built. So now we bumped it up to 73. As this lady has addressed, and it said that she uses that gravel road sometimes. As soon as we pave this road, we're going to get traffic from that neighborhood, the back of Heathrow. And I'm still concerned about the traffic flow. I don't know if y'all remember that that's what I was here for or not. But almost doubling the houses and just opening the road up in general, and especially like where the road is at, is right before the curve going down Rash Hill. So the sight line is not going to be very good. If y'all went out there today, you'd see people driving 60 miles an hour going down that road. Last time I was here, I requested that if this get approved, that the street department put a 3-way stop at the exit of that neighborhood to slow down traffic and to let people out of this neighborhood. You know, if the city street department has no interest in doing anything about that, then maybe they should do a study. The last study that was done on Rash Road was done before the bridge on County Road 16 was rebuilt, which is rebuilt now, which has doubled the traffic on this road, people coming from Central. So I would suggest that you all, or if somebody suggests doing a traffic study, taking into account what this little tiny 2-lane road that's barely big enough for 2 cars and it's got big trucks going down it, what impact that is going to have. We've had multiple accidents. You get down to where the turn is at Rash Hill, people go straight. We had an incident right across the street from me. Somebody just barely got off the edge of the road because the road's narrow, flipped his truck, almost killed him. I think another issue that this property is going to bring about is getting to Cloverdale Road where Lister Hill Bank's at. You have all these new cars getting out in the morning. They're going to be backed up a decent amount of way because there's not a turn lane for the right-hand lane to turn on red. And it's already an issue with Lister Hill being there, especially at certain times of the day. And, you know, I think one thing, if I remember correctly also, there was an issue about who had the right, who has the rights of the Rash Road right there. And I don't know if this can be addressed. About who needed to be contacted, whether it was the county needs to approve something, if it was to be a stop sign, or if it's the city. Well, according to the county yesterday, all of this is up to the city now because y'all have annexed both sides of the road where this road comes out. So the county has absolutely nothing to do with that one little stretch of road where y'all own on both sides of the road. So again, my issue is keeping my buffer zone with the mature trees and doing something to help control this traffic if y'all decide to approve this plan. Because this road is gonna be a mess. It's narrow. There's one way to get to a main road, Cloverdale Road. And since they built the bridge and opened that back up, it has been dreadful. And not even to mention, where this road comes out, there's trees to the street there. The White House that's on the corner, there's trees to the street there. So you're gonna have very limited sight distance. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clemens. I was just looking again, I can tell you there was no comment from the street department, nor from 911, nor from the police department on this particular application. Just
And it's hard for me to understand how the street department wouldn't have any interest in that.
Hold on, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but to be clear, it would not be the street department. This would
Right.
be, engineering would need to look at this. And the
Yeah.
street department actually only puts up the stop sign. They would not determine if a stop sign is needed. That would be up to the police chief to do that. And as part of a plan review, as, again, not at the preliminary level, but at the general level, they will have to provide
Right.
access drawings and engineered access drawings.
And as the street, I was referring to his comments about the narrowness of the road.
Sure.
That's-
Well, and that was part of my issue too, because I talked to somebody in engineering yesterday, and they said you need to talk to the county. And when I talked to the county, they're like, all of that city. So somebody needs to decide who's gonna make decisions on this.
I don't agree with you there, sir. Right. Thank you very much, Mr.
Is the city engineer here?
Clemens.
Because
I don't think so.
No, he is not. I did not see him. Is there anyone else here? Yes, sir, I see you back there, please.
My name is Greg Summers. Nice to meet you, Jim.
Yes.
I live at 210 Chestnut Oak Drive, which is just out 1,000 feet from, so we were never notified. But that's okay, because we didn't live within 1,000 feet. And I would like to reiterate something that he said. With 73 homes, you have the potential for 219 more cars. If you take, every home has 3 cars. The stop sign is a good idea, maybe a roundabout's a good idea. At least it'll slow traffic down, because I've been walking through there and sometimes the cars will zoom by you coming up the hill. And it's not very safe to walk, but anyway, that was just one thing I wanted to reiterate. And the other thing, to the gentleman who said there were signs posted, I've been living here for 4 years now, 3.5 years. I've never seen a sign posted about this subdivision. So I don't know if there was or if somebody took them down, but I didn't see one. So, and a couple other people from the subdivision are here tonight. So, and so that got that one. And I have, some of my questions can't be answered because they're too early, just bypass them and let them go. But as far as I know, this is in Cypress Creek Manor that's covered under the current HOA that we should have. And Cypress Creek Manor says it should be 2,200 square feet minimum and lot sizes. So if you're cutting down the smaller homes, wouldn't that affect the Cypress Creek?
Ms. Summers, I appreciate your point there, but private issues are not
No.
into our purview.
Well, he said he
purview on
was,
that.
the builder said he was building 1,700 to 2,000.
Right, but again, that's not something that we're concerned about, is
Okay.
what any private covenants may be,
No.
or whether or not they applied, or if they were built in phases, so they would or would not apply, that's not what we.
No, that's why one of my questions, if it's not appropriate for right now, maybe it's for the next meeting.
Well,
Or never, maybe it's never.
Not for us anyway. It may be for somebody else, but not for us.
So now, addressing some of the sewer issues that we've had.
Right.
I've had to pay over 11,000 out of my own pocket to fix some of the drainage issues at my own house because the current builder didn't want to take care of it. And there are still stormwater issues that we have and drainage issues on most of that. So is this going to be fixing all of those? The builder going to be trying to fix those so that we don't have the runoff and everything else that comes back that way?
Yeah, I can tell you, it wouldn't be fixing anything in your subdivision, just to make sure it have a zero impact on your subdivision for anything they did in the future.
Okay. Okay, so we talked about the roads, but the last study was done in 2023, so maybe it's time to do a new study with the extra possibility of 219 cars. So one of our main arguments with this is not a standalone development. This is an additional phase to an already established neighborhood, which would be Ryan's Place or Cypress Creek. And all the houses and lots were built to a high standard, and the recurrent reduction of a lot and the home sizes may negatively affect our value of the homes. So just the point out there, just to understand why we're concerned.
Sir.
And now, I don't know if this is an appropriate question for now, but I'll ask it. If you want to say bypass, that's fine. But if this is all approved and the developer changes plans halfway through, because I've lived in subdivisions where in Beaufort, Georgia and Cumming, Georgia, where the developer went bankrupt 3 or 4 times and it'd been bought out, and other people come in, it gets bought out, they go bankrupt, and it finally gets finished after 5 or 6 years. So if that would happen here, is there a plan to sell the lots to somebody else to finish them, or will it just all the work be stopped?
That would not be something we could control.
No, I know. I thought I said that.
I will say that in our plan review, we approve plans on a preliminary, general, and final basis, including a plat as well. So they would have to completely abandon everything, but then a plat would still stand as well at that time. But again, that would not be what a developer would do at that point, would not be.
No, not up to you. Okay. Now, I have read like 5 different things online, and I talked to Skylar. He gave me a website, but I couldn't find the current zoning for R2 for Alabama. I did do a search and found like 5 different documents from 1975 to 1990, from 1943, that says R2 is different, R2's different, and none of them agreed on what R2 was. So what are the biggest differences from R1 to R2 zone?
Ms. Bailey, that sounds like a good one for you. That is codified in our zoning.
I fired up Mike. So it sounds like the dates that you gave me, it sounds like you were looking at state code rather than local code.
I was looking for state and local.
Okay, well, the state code doesn't address individual zoning districts. For local zoning for Florence, an R1 district has a minimum of 10,000 square foot lots, and an R2 district has a minimum of 7,200 square foot lots. As far as land use, they're identical. They're both single-family residential districts. And they each have a 45% coverage area as far as impervious surface goes. So if you do 45% of a minimum of 7,200 square feet, you get somewhere around 3,000 square feet for building space.
Okay. Well, good. I didn't find that. He told me to go to Muni Code, or
yeah,
but I didn't. I went there, but my search probably was a little bit different, so sorry about that. And then the other question is the retention pond that is currently there is not fenced. Is there plans to have that fenced so that people or children don't fall into that retention pond?
That would be addressed in
Final
future
plans?
plans.
Okay. Well, you've answered that, so. And since you're already, the drainage swells, that's already been mentioned, so I don't have anything else.
Thank you very much, Mr. Summers.
Thank you.
It was good talking to you on the
You
phone.
too, thanks.
Is there anyone else here to speak to this application here on the left side of the building, stage right? Yep. Got one in front of you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you.
My name is David Stone. I live on Rice Road. I've got the 33 acres adjacent to this 23 acres. I've got a terrible hearing problem. I don't know what's been said by any of these other people. So I repeat anything, it's because I can't hear it. But let me tell you this, I have no objections to anybody, any businessman trying to better themselves. My objection is, this initial proposal was for an R1 subdivision. And now this proposal's been changed. They want to change it to an R2 proposal. That is going to really devalue our property. And I think it's really sad. Like I said, I don't want to waste your time or my time. I want to be standing, if this initial proposal, a R1 proposal, I wouldn't say a word. That's fine. I do not object to bettering, the back property, the homes behind my property, the homes bordering my property are beautiful. They are just amazing. And now, if you haven't seen the subdivision, it's curbs, sidewalks, underground utilities, it's beautiful. And now you're going to devalue all these people's property. And like I said, I think it's truly sad. And if the proposal stays as R1, I have no objections. But R2 is, you gotta look at 23 acres is small. And now you're proposing 73 units. They're gonna devalue the property terribly. I hope you consider all that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone. We didn't get your street address.
901.
901, thank you. Okay, very good. Mr. Johnson.
Hi, Buddy Johnson, 201 Chestnut Oak Drive. My wife and I just built a house about a year ago, and as HGTV would say, it's our forever home. So, so I'm just down the street from Foster Drive. Traffic concerns me. I agree with the gentleman that lives on Rash Road. I do take that dirt road to get out to Cloverdale on a few occasions, and what you see to the left is very dark, drops off. So I think that's going to be a huge issue for this area. But I guess my biggest question is, will this commission approve a plat for this project? And let me tell you where I'm headed with that. It's just, if we rezone it to R2, and then he decides, I'm gonna build HUD housing in there, government subsidized housing, that would severely devalue our own properties. Would that be part of this planning process, or does that happen afterwards?
I can tell you, it would not be part of this planning process in that, as it goes through the planning process, the preliminary, the general, and then the final process, it's going to be based on the proposal that you have seen here today.
Okay.
For single-family homes, You've heard Mr. Gilchrist describe what those single-family homes are at that time. And also, what you have heard is some of the departmental comments of what would be necessary to develop it in that style as well. Now, at the last day, if he met all of the requirements, I can't say what they may do. And that's for any development within the city of Florence as well, and any developer. You know, it's never good for a developer to say that they're going to do one thing and then completely do another as well. For the future, that's happened extremely seldom in my time here, but just not something that we can take in consideration as we move forward. Is strictly on a technical basis as we have to view these things for our recommendation as well as when it comes to subdivision approval.
Just wanted to clarify what that
That's
process was.
right.
So, not being familiar with this part of the city government, so,
Now, you do a lot of this. We welcome you here every fourth Tuesday. You can learn a lot about it, right?
I'm on the third floor as we speak. So I
That's right.
just came down the elevator and just got to the meeting, but I'm concerned about, adding a lot of houses in it.
Right.
And it being, something that would be less than what Ryan's Place is now. And I'm in Cypress Creek Manor, but we're all on the same street, so nobody knows when you left one subdivision and went to the other one, you're gonna be in that same situation as you go north. And I want it to all flow, I want it to be something that we're all proud of. And then I want us to be able to get in and out of the place, so we don't have.
Absolutely.
The streets are wide enough and it can take on the additional traffic.
That's right. And we may have further comments from the departments as the process moves through. Should move through. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Anyone else here to speak to the subject? Yes, sir.
My name's Greg Taylor. I live at 112 Chestnut Oak Drive. So I did get a notice because this backs up to my property because technically I'm in Ryan's Place, even though our houses were all built to the Cypress Manor standards. I guess my question is, what do you guys take in consideration as far as the precedents to change these to R2? Because if I understand, from just thinking about the area, I'm not sure if there's any other R2 in that area. Everything's R1. When we bought the house in 2022, Mr. Oakley built our house. We were under the assumption that it was going to be similar back there, the 50 houses or whatever the original proposal was. We're fine with that. Honestly, I don't mind that getting developed. I'd like the road to be paved anyways. The traffic is an issue. Rash is terrible. It's way too narrow. And then the water issue back there is just bad right now. It just runs off Eddingware when it runs. They'll regrade Foster. It rains and there's potholes everywhere. So I'm all about that getting fixed and paved. But I don't think that the precedent is necessarily set for R2 to be a part of a development in that area, because there's not any around there now. Even the older neighborhoods are probably bigger lots than what's in Cypress Manor and Ryan's Place and Heathrow. And so I just would ask you guys to take that in consideration. I appreciate Mr. Gilchrist talking. I was concerned that it was going to be a tract builder that came in like you have in Madison or Huntsville. It sounds like the houses he plans to build are nice houses. I just think there's too many of them. And I get the reason why with the cost. I think Mr. Oakley didn't move forward with his development because of those costs, is what he told me. Is there any consideration to the city actually pitching in to create a better infrastructure of sewer there to fix that issue? I mean, the revenue that's going to be generated from those houses is going to go to the city. I feel like that's part of the city's responsibility. Obviously, that area of Cloverdale is expanding and growing. It's probably the next expansion for Florence North. We see that with the Publix, everything else that's going in. Infrastructure has not been addressed. That's a problem all throughout Florence. I'm a businessman here. I deal with it all the time, and I think that's got to be considered. I want it to be developed. I want you guys to develop that. I want it to be developed right, though. and not just, hey, we're doing this because this cost is so expensive. Our city shouldn't be prohibitive to developers when we're trying to grow. And we are gonna receive Huntsville and Madison into our area before long. So I just ask you to take that into consideration when you're making the recommendation on these properties.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. I think you're very well spoken, and if I might add this, and let me say again what Ms. Bailey said, and when it comes to R1 and R2, there's still single-family homes.
Sure.
And again, what we regulate in that is not the minimum that's built, but is actually the maximum that's built. Mr. Gilchrist has provided what he plans to do that is closer to the higher end of what that is. So you're fortunate in this respect. But I do understand your concern, but I'm concerned that there's a feeling that R1 to R2 is a downgrade in subdivision status. It is not. And I know that's hard to understand when it's in your backyard.
Yeah, I can tell you that may be technically the answer. That's not the perception.
It's not the perception.
That's probably not the case if you go to other neighborhoods in our city. That's not the case.
And we look at a lot of statistics also in terms of property values and what happens in the future over time. And well-kept up neighborhoods stay well-kept up, and those values increase along with everything around them, whether they're R1, R2, or even R3 is what we find. And when we deal with apartments, we hear a lot of throwback, oh, it's an apartment, and that sort of thing. Well, well-kept apartments are just as strong in value and contribute to neighborhoods as well as any of these other things do. Now, pardon me for getting on my own private land there. The commission was going, come on, Jim, stop this, we've heard this before, and I will stop.
I get it, but he did mention, building $200,000 to $300,000 houses or whatever. My house was $500,000.
$500,000, right.
And those houses are gonna back up to mine, so it's not the same, in all due respect.
Oh, yes.
So I appreciate your comments, I understand it. I just ask you to consider, I don't think there's a precedent for R2 in that area. And I do think the city should do their part and pitch in and build that infrastructure out.
Well,
And split the cost at least anyways. I get the developer having a responsibility with that as well.
you're also fortunate tonight that you have two city council people listening to you speak.
Yes, I plan to be at that meeting as well.
Not that I know they probably have never heard that before, but I appreciate you saying it again. Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. Is there anyone else here to speak to this application? Anyone at all? And with that, we will close this public hearing. I thank everyone for participating in it. It is local government, and as they say, politics is local. Right now, we have a request that is actually bifurcated into two different requests. We have a request for a recommendation from R1 single-family residential to R2 small lot. And then separately, we will have a preliminary plan approval, which is a subdivision requirement for as a second request on this. Right now, though, as a recommending body to the city council for them to consider, I'll take up the question of a recommendation from rezoning from R1 to R2. Is there discussion on this motion before there is one? Yes, ma'am.
Remind me what the maximum structures are for R1.
It'd be 45, maximum structure size, 45% of the area. Might just go up. It's 45% of the site area. So if you had 10,000 square feet, 4,500 would be your max. 7,200 square feet, it's something like 3,000, 32, something like that. Maybe 36, I don't know.
That's first floor.
Yeah, that's your footprint.
Thank you, Ms. Abbott. Anyone else?
And you might also note that on this particular plan, I believe we calculated somewhere around, it was more than a quarter of the lots are actually 10,000 square feet. And the rest of them are, there may be a few that are in the 7,200 to 8,000 range, but there are several that are above that as well. Again, doesn't matter, it's all single-family residential in terms of land use.
So just to reiterate, so this is, we're approving the preliminary, which will allow the builder to research and figure out if they can afford what they want to do.
It requires them, at that point, if they move to the general plan, that they have to submit their engineer drawings at the next phase.
Yes, Mr. Abbott.
To extend what Michelle was saying, since this is a request for rezoning and preliminary, will that give the credence why the engineering and the street department have no interest in this right here?
Likely.
Because
they don't really have anything to review yet.
Until it goes to the next.
Right.
And then the issues of the line of sight and traffic and
That's
all
correct.
that. That's when that's going to get.
That's correct. Yeah, so at the preliminary level, what we're looking for is, in concept, if it meets the technical requirements of the subdivision regulations. That's the first thing that we look at when we get a submittal like this. Rather than requiring those engineered drawings to come to us at that point, having the preliminary plan gives the owner, the developer, the opportunity to receive comments on what they can anticipate moving forward. Because we have codified the preliminary plan approval stage in our ordinance, it's not required. The general plan and final plan are also not required.
As well as notices are not required.
That's right. Neither are signs. So in doing that, it allows us to, look at any encroachment issues that, that may be, that may arise later down the road that we'd rather address now. But Mr. Abernathy makes a good point. Their concurrence is in concept. Then, once those engineered drawings are submitted, that's the meat and potatoes, if you will.
So this could change, this will change based on engineering comments if they have any.
I mean, I can't say that it will, it potentially could, affect the number of units, it could affect the lot layout, it could affect the road layout, depending on where all their other public infrastructure has to go. But in concept, what we're looking at, it will be similar going forward.
I guess, so here's what because of the traffic and Rash Road and hearing everyone, and for the departments not to be here to answer questions of either side, that's my opinion, that it's hard to make a decision.
In terms of Rash Road, and I attempted to answer this earlier, there are portions of Rash Road that are controlled by the city. And this particular portion across from this property across Rash Road is, time for dinner, is controlled by the city. The majority of Rash Road is not. It is controlled by the county. So, depending on sometimes, a question will come in, to our department and, we're answering the question that's being presented to us when in fact, there may be a lot more to what the person is trying to ask, and we're just not able to get there, in that phone conversation. So, but there are portions of Rash Road that are county and a small portion that is the city. Again, a preliminary plan is in concept, and with subdivision of property, they either meet the requirements of the preliminary plan or they don't. And as maybe harsh or structured as that sounds, that's the nature of subdivision of property in the state of Alabama. So, I would caution in terms of, not seeing those intricate details on access at this level because it's not required by the ordinance.
not required, I mean, I'm just trying to understand, so it's not required, but it is, if it's not gonna change a lot for,
We don't know that.
can we ask city councilman, can we request that engineering and the water department send someone to these meetings?
That would be a mayoral request,
Okay.
as they are employees of the city.
Okay.
And it falls under the executive branch of government.
Okay.
But I'm certain that Mayor Betterton would welcome that request.
Okay.
I have a question.
Thank you, ladies. Yes, Ms. Eubanks.
Could you, Ms. Bailey, address Mr. Taylor's comment about the precedent setting of R2? Could you tell me anywhere in this area, or if there is any abutment for R1 or R2 in this area?
In the area, I don't know. I can't answer that at this point, but in the city, absolutely. Again, they are both single-family residential districts. In fact, the only reason that those districts were separated decades ago, prior to the city having a sanitary sewer program, when all things were on septic tank, that was decades and decades ago, there was a requirement that the lots had to be a certain size, and I believe that was 10,000 square feet. As the city began to grow and the sanitary sewer program was put in place, it wasn't necessary for those lots to be a minimum of 10,000 square feet so that they would, perk for a septic tank purpose. So, seeing as that, in a city, there are varying types of ownership, there's varying types of families. You have single person families, you have, any number of dependents, you have home sizes that, some people really enjoy having a large home, some would rather have a smaller home, some would rather have a larger yard. I mean, there's that, the city that we live in as well as other cities, those are important to have different types of housing. But in terms of zoning, these are both single-family residential zones. So you can have a home that is the same size in an R1 zone. You can have a lot that's the same size as in an R1 zone. The only land use allowed is a single-family residential home.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bailey.
Does that help?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any other questions for the department or discussion among the members? Mr. Pride?
I'll just make a comment. All properties that are annexed into the city come in as R1. And then they're rezoned, if necessary, based on what the appropriate use for that property is. But you might see a tract down the road that's R1. If it's in the city, it came in as R1. We can't annex property with another zone. It has to come in R1. And then if it is rezoned, it's rezoned from that based on what its proper use is. I just want to make that clear.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Pride, for making that comment, because that crossed my mind earlier and then it went right out. But what I would like to add to that as well, because there were some comments that we heard about that this property that there was a plan for this property with other lots. There's never been a recorded plat for this property.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bailey. Any other questions for the department?
Can I make one more comment?
Absolutely. Mr. Pride.
Most of the concerns that I've heard are concerning traffic. And there is a traffic problem. It's traffic problems all over the city, different places. But as this particular project goes forward, those of you that live in that area or in that subdivision that have concerns about something specific that is something that the city controls. It's in the city. What you need to do is you need to get a small group of people and establish communications with the engineering department, because that's where your traffic, whether it be lining a road or stop signs or four-way stops or whatever it may be, that's who you need to, that's who you need to establish some communication with, because we're that's out of our purview here. But if you got a drainage problem, or you got a traffic, want a stop sign somewhere, or whatever, the engineering department is your contact for that. Or as this project goes forward, if somebody mentioned they wanted to see what the infrastructure is gonna look like, they want to see a plan for the infrastructure, well, you would have to go to the engineering department in order to review that, because we're not involved with that. So my bottom line is, what I'm saying is, you need to establish communications with the engineering department.
Thank you, Mr. Pride. Any other further discussion as we move forward here? First thing we have on our agenda is a request for a recommendation of rezoning from R1 to R2 to the city council. Any motion, I would assume will go with departmental comments on both the recommendation for rezoning as well as preliminary plan approval, should it move forward. Do I have a motion? Thank you very much, Ms. Haddock. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Pride. Any discussion on this motion? All in favor by show of hands? All opposed? Everyone opposed, Ms. Albright. That motion for recommendation does move forward to the city council. Mr. Gilchrist. Second thing we have on our agenda tonight is a request for preliminary plan approval. Again, absolutely preliminary as just to a concept of the plan as it is today, from R1 to R2. Any questions or discussion on this motion? Do I have a motion with departmental comments?
So moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Abernathy. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Hubbard. Any discussion on this motion? All in favor by show of hands? Thank you very much. All opposed? One opposed, Ms. Albright. And with that, this motion carries forward for you, Mr. Gilchrist, to the city council. They will be posting, you'll be informed of that hearing coming up for you as well.
After the plat is recorded, that's part of the conference.
Yeah, after the plat is recorded, or
Submitted.
submitted, let me say not recorded, submitted for its review, and that sort of thing. Thank you very much, and I appreciate everyone attending. We have just some business matters we will take care of. If you can just hold for 1 minute, I know everybody needs to go to the bathroom, I certainly do too. So I'm going to be moving through this quickly here as best we can. We have the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of September 24th. They were extensive. Any discussion on these minutes? By the way, thank you, Ms. Albright and Mr. Smith and all of the department for these minutes as they came forward. Any discussion, Ms. Hubbard? Any discussion on the minutes? Motion to approve. All in favor by acclamation and show of hands? Thank you very much. All approved.
Who was the second?
That me. Thank you very much. Yes. Director's report, Ms. Bailey.
I don't have anything, thank you.
Thank you very much. The chairman's report, one of the things we have included in this is a report of the technical committee from during the week before this week as to the conditional overlay. The technical committee did approve the recommendation that, as was noted earlier in the meeting for that, and that is part of this report as well.
And we will make that as part of the minutes.
As part of the minutes, please. And thank you, Ms. Bailey, for covering me on that. as always. And again, I thank everyone for participating and for the extra time tonight. I know it wasn't as long as the 3.5 hours meeting last time, which we all had so much fun at. And I encourage y'all, if you want to hang around and talk, please do for the rest of the time until the lights go out, as Miss Bailey gives me a cross-eyed look. But I do thank everyone for attending tonight and participating in local government. Have a good evening.